Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Since we're all standing, I'd like to ask my good friend Bill Carr to lead us in a word of prayer, please.
Thank you. Y'all remain standing, please. Lord God of our fathers, we thank you for our manifold blessings, the inspirations and joys of life, our companionship and association one with another. We pray you bless us assembled here today in reverence of God and a loyalty to our country. Guide the deliberations of this meeting, and may the policies adopted at this meeting ever uphold the best and finest expressions of patriotism and good citizenship. And may our chief concern be to the integrity of our nation and the peace of the world. Strengthen us in the service of our country, that our country may be a source of hope and blessing to the world. Amen.
Amen. Please remain standing. I'll ask our Military Affairs Chairman here in Wayne County, Julie Daniels, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Would you please join me in the pledge? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everyone can be seated. Once again, I'd like to welcome our Speaker Tillis and Senator McCain to Goldsboro, North Carolina, as we call it God's country. And the city of Goldsboro is very proud to host Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, home of the 4th Fighter Wing, the greatest fighter wing on planet Earth. We are the most military. Under Speaker Tillis' direction this last session, and with our good colleagues, Representative Dixon, Senator Lewis Pay, who couldn't be here today, and the whole Wayne County delegation led a bill through that dealt with wind permitting process here in the state. It was the first one in the entire nation. And what that bill did is establish a wind permitting process to protect our low-level flying routes in the Dare County bombing range, which directly affects what happens in Seymour Johnson and Cherry Point and through military operations in our state. So welcome. The military means a lot to us today, and we're glad that you're here to share with us and discuss issues with us today. Before we get started with the panel, I'd like to introduce our panel. My name is Representative John Bell. I serve in the 10th House District, which includes Craven, Greene, Lenore, and Wayne counties, and in my first term, and will be heading back to my second term after the election. I'd like to ask our panel to give a brief introduction. We're limited to time, and I'll start with
I'm Joe Marm. I live in Fremont.
United States Navy Sea veteran, and currently I'm serving as the Wayne County Veterans Patriots Coalition president.
I'd like to ask my good friend, Representative Jimmy Dixon, not only introduce himself, but introduce one of our special guests.
Thank you, Representative Bell. What a delightful honor and experience it is to be here with you this morning. I'm Jimmy Dixon. I am a farmer from Duplin County. I'm in my second term, going into my third term in the General Assembly. I'm chair of the House Agriculture Committee. I'm the only Republican ever reelected from our neighboring county of Duplin. It's a great honor to be here. You know, ladies and gentlemen, just a few years ago, Tom Tillis was a PTA president in his local community. Something must have happened along about that time that increased his interest in the political atmosphere of our nation, because that was a stepping stone. He became interested in the future welfare of our children and our grandchildren. And he decided to throw his hat in the pot and run for the North Carolina General Assembly. He won that race and came to Raleigh. Along about in 2009, under Speaker Tillis' leadership, some of the ambitious Republicans in the North Carolina General Assembly started toying with the idea that the Republicans could achieve a majority in the North Carolina General Assembly. Under his leadership, they got busy. They raised money. They went all across this state. They put forth an extended effort, and when that effort was over with, his account balance in his campaign with all the rest of the members of the General Assembly was at zero. I was the beneficiary of part of that great effort. We achieved that year in the Republican wave in North Carolina 68 members of the General Assembly. Those of us present decided that we would elect Tom Tillis as the Speaker. And thus began a great journey of new and inspired leadership in the state of North Carolina like we've never experienced before. I knew immediately when Speaker Tillis took the effort and energy to go to great extent to find some nice heart pine, which is precious to the state of North Carolina, and had a gavel turned out of that heart pine and brought it into the General Assembly and named it after Thomas Raymond Tillis, his father. I understood that we were in the presence of a man that understood what his roots were. I realized that we were in the presence of a man who valued the experiences of our forefathers, who understood by his own experiences the value of work, industry, thrift, and self-reliance. In 2012, we expanded that majority to a supermajority. Entering into the General Assembly was freshly elected representatives like the great John Bell here, who came in with an enormous ego, who had to turn sideways to walk through the door. And combined with a lot of other people, Speaker Tillis then realized his greatest challenge. Here were all these new guys and ladies in the General Assembly.
Pretty well wrapping it up now?
Yes, sir. who had the greatest challenge, and that was to herd these cats, and he's done a great job of doing it. I actually endorsed this man. And Senator McCain, when he gets to Washington, there will be a difference in Washington. Speaker Tom Tillis.
Nice job. Well done.
Yeah, now I've got to introduce Senator McCain. I was just going to
Make
say,
it about
ladies and
twice as
gentlemen.
long as Jimmy's.
No, that's what I was. Jimmy, I call him Jimmy D. Jimmy and John, you all need to know you've got two of the best members in the House sitting before you today. They're great, hard workers. They're easy to manage. When you're Speaker of the House, you're a cat herder. And it's really great to have people like this that you can rely on to come down there and just get work done, check the egos at the door and get work done. So y'all should be very proud of your representation in the House. I know I'm proud of them. I'm going to be very brief and then get to the questions fairly quickly for the roundtable. But today I'm proud to be here in the presence of great senator, a hero, somebody that served his country in several different ways, and he's also, as I was riding in, we were riding in from Raleigh today, I was just amazed that I'm sitting in the back room with somebody that I wish was our president. Just imagine where this nation would be 6 years from 2008 if we had the kind of leadership that Senator McCain would have brought to the table. So I'm thrilled to be able to have the privilege and the honor to welcome him to this state and to have him participate in this roundtable. I also want to thank all of you. A lot of you, I see a lot of familiar faces around the room, and a lot of people have been very supportive of me. We're going to get this done in 19 days. We're breaking at the right time. People are listening. People need a change, and with your support, we're going to be there. Having people like Senator McCain come in and support our efforts is just a true honor and privilege to have a man of his stature here today. So without any more flourish, Senator McCain, let's give him a warm North Carolina welcome.
Thank you very much, Tom. And Jimmy, that was wonderful. That was really good. I was glad you were able to get in a shot against John, too, while you were at it. I thank all of you for being here. And I thank you, first of all, for your steadfast support of the men and women in the military, especially here at Seymour Johnson. I hear from my friends in the Air Force that the relationship here with the community and with our men and women in the Air Force is remarkable, and I want to say thank you for that. We have an all-volunteer force, and we want our people to be stationed where they are welcome, and in fact, in this case, loved. So I want to thank all of you for what you have done in helping these young men and women, many of whom are away from home for the first time. And also, I would like to say hello to our Marine Corps friends. In case you missed it, 3 days ago was the Navy birthday. I'm sure you celebrated that, Vic. It was great. I once...
Ours is 10th November.
Well, thank you, Bill. I once, when I graduated from the Naval Academy, Vic and Bill, I tried to get in the Marine Corps, but my parents were married, and so. And I had a son, one of my sons who is 18, joins the Marine Corps, spends some time in Iraq, and came home to me and he said, Dad, he said, you know, the Marines are part of the Navy Department. He said, the men's department. And I'm sure you appreciate that, Vic. I don't want to take a long time because we'd like to hear, I know we'd like to hear from you. Obviously, I'm here because I believe that this experienced, talented leader, a proven leader, as Jimmy pointed out, is what we need in Washington, D.C. And I know of his commitment to the veterans and the men and women who are serving. I just want to discuss, I'd be glad to talk about what's going on, our failures that has caused this catastrophic situation with the rise of the largest and most powerful terrorist organization in history. I'd like to talk to you about while we sit by and watch Ukraine dismembered, while we watch the Chinese acting more and more aggressively in Asia and a number of other areas as well. But I just want to mention one issue to you, and then maybe, Tom, we could, and that's the whole issue of the VA. I don't have to tell anybody in this room that if there's any group of Americans that we owe an obligation, it's those who served our country and are willing to go out and lay it on the line on behalf of our nation. And what has happened in the VA is not only a scandal, it's a disgrace. It's a black mark on the honor of America, that we have a situation where there's allegations of veterans actually dying, not just not receiving treatment, but dying. I'm sure you know that the scandal began to be uncovered in Phoenix, Arizona, the Phoenix VA. An allegation of 50 of our veterans, proud Arizonans, died for lack of care. Now, since that one broke, all over the country, every VA, we are seeing similar problems throughout. And I'm proud that we passed legislation. Richard Burr was the key guy, by the way, in passing this veterans legislation that we passed. And I would be glad to go over some of the details of it with you. But it was a beginning. My friends, it was a beginning. The Inspector General of the VA has said there are fundamental systemic problems in the VA. And our veterans are still not getting the care that they have, that we owe them as Americans. And I know there are people in this room that have dealt with our veterans who have had the same problems that the veterans in my state have. The casework in my state, in my offices, is more on veterans issues than all the others combined. And so we have a lot of work to do. And I believe that Tom is committed to our veterans. He showed that as Speaker of the House here. I'm sure that he will bring that to Washington. Richard Burr is the leader. As you know, he's the senior Republican on the Veterans Affairs Committee in the Senate. And we will work hand in glove in making sure that we provide these veterans with what, I mean, it really breaks your heart when you meet some of these veterans whose health has been absolutely neglected because of a corrupt and inefficient and corrupt organization. So I commit to you that Tom and I and Richard Burr will work together in Washington, and we won't quit until we care for our veterans. And I just, one other issue, if I could, aspect of this. Look, the VA is good at some things. They're not very good at some other things. They're good at prosthesis. They're good at traumatic brain injury. They are good at PTSD. They're not good in some other specialties which may be, and in many times is, more available and more efficient in the private healthcare system than it is within the VA. So we need to look at what the VA does really good and very well in areas which maybe our veterans could get better care outside of the VA. You know what that means? It means give them a card. Give them a card, just like people on Medicare. Give them a card and say, go where you want to. Get the best care you can, and we'll provide it for you. So we need to have a great debate on how we can best care for our veterans. How can we really give them what we owe them? And maybe just one afterthought, I'm proud of the GI Bill we passed several years ago for our veterans. It's the best ever. It's better than World War II or Korea or Vietnam. But still, the student loan program problem is a very serious one as well, and that's another one that Thomas had experience on. So I thank all of our veterans. I appreciate it. I would remind you, it doesn't take a lot of talent to get shot down. I was able to intercept a surface-to-air missile with my own airplane, which that's sort of a Marine Corps practice too, Vic, as you know. So, anyway, so thank you all for coming, and I look forward to discussing things with you, and appreciate the fact that I'm able to come on this beautiful day in North Carolina, and so thank you.
Go around for some questions.
Senator McCain, number one, thank you for your service, obviously, and even as providing leadership at the legislative level, and of course your support for the card choice program, which you just spoke of. And it seems that from some of the reports, that it's not being. Of course, you did make sure that it was in the latest VA reform bill, but it seems that it's not being followed appropriately here in North Carolina. And I guess the question that I have really, Speaker Tillis, would be that. When you're elected, what would you be doing to see to it that that's being done according to the law, that the veterans are actually taken care of?
Well, I think there's a lot of opportunities where this administration kind of picks and chooses the laws that they're going to follow. I think anything related to supporting veterans has to be top priority. We've done a lot of that in North Carolina. Senator, we're probably about 3 weeks away from announcing a 150-bed facility for homeless vets up in Buckner that I've been working on with some of my team for probably about a year and a half. And John talked about the encroachment issues for the bases. We could talk about brass to class, giving lateral entry for retired people in armed services to teaching into the education profession. We can talk about in-state tuition, a number of different things that we've been doing to really help. And that's what I want to focus on. I want to focus on it first and foremost because it's what we should be doing for people who have served in uniform. But it's also good business. I want North Carolina, I want this state to continue to emerge as one of the most friendly states to people in the armed services today and people who have retired. We just need to do that here in North Carolina and then replicate it across the nation. So I think a part of it is just making sure that you have somebody that goes up there and views that as one of our top priorities. It's one of our biggest industries. I don't want to separate the heart from the head here, but there's a lot of great business reasons why you do this, in addition to it being the right thing.
Thank you, sir.
Vic?
Actually, I have a couple of things, and thank you for Senator McCain, Speaker Tillis, and Representative Bell and Jimmy Dixon. It's great to see you all again. There's a couple of things that I think as an average voter, and I consider myself an average voter just because I'm the guy that I'm a stay-at-home dad as of right now, but I fought so many years, and just like many people in this room fought for the right to have an opinion, the right to vote. I've seen in foreign countries in 2006, it was probably one of our bloodiest summers in Fallujah, Iraq. I lost a lot of good friends dying for the right to vote. So I have an opinion. One of the things that really bother me, and a lot of the people I talk to, is the distrust in government today. It's a huge distrust. And one of the things I look for you, Speaker Tillis, and one of the things I look for a lot of our elected officials is to bring that honor and trust and that respect back to the Speaker of the House, senators, governors, even the president, vice president. And, we don't do it just for ourselves, but we do it for our future. Our future, like Andrew Daniels sitting in the back right there. I brought him here for a reason, because I wanted him to see, and he's in back, because you know what? Andrew came to my house, and the first thing he recognized is I have a picture of Ronald Reagan on my refrigerator. Andrew's 9. He knows who Ronald Reagan is, and to me, that's the future that's the bright future that I like to think of when I think of who I vote for when I go to the polls. And then there's 2 other things. One that I think is also the biggest threat that I see to our country today, present, is our border security, downsizing of our military. I mean, I can't think of a worse time to downsize our military than we are right now. And I think there's 3 groups that consistently get hit on this is, our teachers, our law enforcement, our firefighters, and our military and our veterans. Just like you said, and I've heard what you guys said, and I appreciate that. And along with the great Senator McCain here, it breaks my heart, and I hope it breaks every red-blooded American's heart in this room and in this state, in this country, when you hear about a veteran dying due to neglect or however he may pass. So I guess my question is that I hope that you can, and I know you can, and I hope you can, and this is why you have my vote, is because I want to see respect and I want to see honor brought back to our elected officials, unlike what we have today. So thank you so much.
As Senator McCain and I were riding down from Raleigh, he was talking with excitement about getting to work next year and getting things done. And he was talking specifically about things that we need to do for armed services and veterans, and his belief that we have several members who are going to be chairing committees that are going to work together and get things done. Vic, I think the biggest frustration among the people that I talk with is they're just not doing anything in Washington. When we got elected in 2010, we made a lot of promises. And I was obsessed with making sure we fulfilled every single one of them. You go up to Washington and you try and use a long list of reasons why you can't get anything done. And I just don't buy it. I don't buy it. You need to have people that go up there who do everything they have to do to fulfill their promises. That's what people want. They don't want broken promises or kind of retroactively, well, I probably shouldn't have said that because it doesn't really work. You need to know what you're saying when you make a promise, and you need to work night and day to fulfill them. And I think that with the leadership that I'm going to come in and follow the lead of, with people like Senator McCain, we're going to get a lot done. And it's not just waiting for the next election, so maybe you add votes or you get a president. We have an obligation next year to get this country back on track. Our safety and security is one of the first things that we have to focus on. Our economic security, our energy security. And I think with people like Senator McCain, they're ready. They've been chomping at the bit. You talk to these senators, and they talk about the way Harry Reid has shut down the institution of Congress, and it is a disgrace. And I think, actually, Senator McCain, I'd like for you to talk a little bit about maybe what we talked about today in terms of things we can immediately get to work on.
Well, thank you, Vic, and you're right. By the academicians say this is what we just finished was the least productive Congress in the history of the country. That's quite a commentary. In fact, in case you missed it, the approval rating of Congress is now 12%. Have you seen that? 12%. Now, is there anyone here in the 12% that approves of Congress? I didn't think so. If there is, I want to know where the hell you've been. Anyway, I've often said we're now down to paid staff and blood relatives, and I'm not making this up now. I have a mother who's 102 years old. I received a call from her the other day. We're now down to paid staff. I was coming through the airport just yesterday afternoon and I flew in from Atlanta, and a guy ran up to me and said, "Hey," he said, "anybody ever tell you look a lot like Senator John McCain?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Doesn't it sometimes make you mad as hell?" So thank you. So you are right. There is enormous dissatisfaction out there. And I want to just comment on two other things you said. Yes, we have to secure our border. Yes, we can secure our border. You know, Vic, and so do others in this room, we developed technology in Iraq particularly, but also in Afghanistan, where we have the ability to surveil. And we can, through fencing and through surveillance capabilities, but there's a radar called a Vader radar. It not only detects people where they are, it tracks them back to where they came from. I mean, and with drones, we can secure our border, but we're not doing it. And then finally, could I say, yes, sequestration has damaged the men. Talk to the young men and women who are out at Seymour. Ask the pilots who are not getting the flying hours that they need in order to maintain their proficiency. Ask about the maintenance backlog of the aircraft. I see people nodding their heads here that they're not allowed to. They are not as operationally capable as they need to be in a world that is much more dangerous since we started these cuts in defense spending. Now, so what do we need to do? We need to get the train running again. We promise the American people, if we get the majority with Tom and his experience as speaker and getting things done in the legislature here, that we will take up bill after bill and take up a budget, and we will debate them. And yes, we may have to take some tough votes. And that is what we are promising the American people that we will do. And, you know, I joked about it, about the disapproval rating and all that, but frankly, sometimes I am a little embarrassed. I really am, because we should be doing a whole lot more for the American people, particularly in these very difficult times.
We have about 10 minutes left. Because Representative Dixon took so much time with his introduction.
I was under 3 minutes.
Depends on who's counting. One of the major issues that we face here, not just in Goldsboro, but all of eastern North Carolina, is the protection of our military bases. At the state level, we did a lot in the last session to protect encroachment issues, to establish a wind permitting process that would not affect our low-level training routes. We've got Julie Daniels here, who's the chairman of our Military Affairs Committee here. The reason why a lot of folks are here today is because of that base right down the street. It's so important to not just our economic impact here, but all of our military bases in North Carolina are so important. Can you touch on what you would do in Washington to take that message back that we need to protect our bases here in North Carolina?
Yeah, I think, John, we were talking about with the encroachment issue. I've tried to spend a lot of time down meeting with the leadership at our bases to find out, you know, what can we do better to make their job easier. You know, a lot of people think that these the men and women who are responsible for these bases are just working out war plans. They don't realize they're running a major, complex business operation. They got to deal with local governments and dealing with building and zoning. They're not exempted from that sort of stuff. Then we've got the encroachment threats that continue to come at us. And I've tried to make sure that North Carolina, in every category that matters, is considered one of the best of all the other states. And I did that because I wanted us to have a compelling case when you get into possible BRACs or other situations, that North Carolina becomes a place that still has the potential to grow. I don't accept this idea that we necessarily have to have a smaller presence in North Carolina. There may be some states that do. You go out to California, they don't care about encroachment. They never saw an encroachment that they didn't want to impose on. No, I mean, it's serious. And so what we're trying to do is make sure when those tough decisions, when I go up there, with the experience that I've had as speaker, I can go up there with the full knowledge that on most categories, North Carolina is about as good as it gets. And you work with South Carolina because we've got a vested interest in maintaining a solid reputation. We need to be fighting for maintaining our presence and potentially growing it. And I tell you something that we need to do, and I know it's in the back of a lot of y'all's minds. So sequestration right now is a major threat to us. It threatens 20 to 30,000 jobs in and around this area. We've got to get that off the books and start doing responsible budgeting and get off of these indiscriminate cuts that are a real threat. But then when changes have to be made, when there's consolidations and potential closings, I want to make very certain that people in Washington understand the the promise that North Carolina has to support and expand our military presence.
Could I also say that the legislation protecting the low-level training routes was more important than I think almost anybody understands. There is so little area on the whole East Coast that allows for the training, you know, Pete, that allows for the kind of training that is absolutely necessary for our pilots. In fact, Pete, you might want to comment on that.
Yes, sir. I am privileged to serve with Representative Bell on the Governor's Military Affairs Commission, and we have determined through discussions with senior leaders in the Air Force that it's imperative that we take care of the Dare County range. We share that airspace, I believe, with Oceana, the fighters up there. So Dare County range is going to be critical to the success of Seymour Johnson Field.
And if you don't have a place to train, then you reduce the argument for the presence of the military. So these training areas are vital, and I want to thank you again for having that legislation passed, because there may be further cutbacks in the military, although I think I hope that there's not further cutbacks, and I'll fight against further cutbacks. But it certainly gives you a great deal of assurance having had the ability to train. And frankly, there's very little of that on the East Coast. A lot of units are having come all the way out to Arizona to train in our ranges out there, which obviously involves dislocation, additional costs, etc. And again, I want to thank all of you for, this is an all-volunteer force we got. And we want the men and women who are serving to be happy. And the people who know the people around here and the environment that's here and the welcoming atmosphere we have makes them happy to be in the United States Air Force.
Mm-hmm. Pete, you know, something else I was briefed, it was about 2 years ago, and it's on the broader Southeastern strategy for conservation corridor, basically conservation corridors that support other mission training. I think that's a great, it's a great marriage of things that are going to preserve and expand our access to training areas, and at the same time support conservation of undisturbed lands. And I think if we do more of that and we connect that master plan, which comes from North Carolina down to South Carolina all the way into Georgia, you put that together, and then you've got a mass of land to support training missions. It's unlike anything else on the Eastern Seaboard.
And I didn't respond adequately on one point here. The beauty of having the majority is to have hearings. Those hearings, you drag people from the administration up before the Senate of the United States and the American people and ask them the tough questions. What's happened to the readiness of our military? Can we fight a couple more wars? A couple of wars at the same time. The General Odierno, the Chief of Staff of the United States Army, is testifying and has before our committee that he is not prepared to meet all of our operational requirements because of sequestration. And I believe that we can have those kinds of hearings and that kind of exposure of the American people to the challenges that we face.
We have enough time for one more question.
As a military spouse and having an active duty husband right now, who just got back from his 4th combat tour, obviously a big thing on our minds is ISIS and what's happening. What would you do differently than what our current leadership in North Carolina is doing in regards to the Islamic State?
Well, I'd show up to hearings. I would take that responsibility seriously. But I think that the concern that I have, and I want to defer to Senator McCain. So I think, this has to be a comprehensive strategy, and the end goal is very clear. You need to wipe ISIS off the face of the planet, period. And you need to develop a comprehensive strategy that involves partners in the Middle East and many of our allies who, quite honestly, I think for the reasons Senator McCain have said, bombing ISIS targets in Syria and Iraq is not a strategy, it's a tactic. But what he hasn't done is put together something that actually can convince the American people and people in Congress that we have a plan to end ISIS. And Senator McCain, I'll defer to you.
Thank you for your families and your entire family as service to this country, spouses, serve as honorably and with as much difficulty and challenges as their spouses do. So thank you for it. And congratulations on your award, too. There's a lot of things that we need to do, but I just want to repeat one of the things that Tom said. You don't tell the enemy what you're not going to do. You don't tell the enemy that you're going to attack them and then wait a couple of weeks while they vacate all the buildings. You know, a bunch of those shots you saw of buildings getting hit exactly precision, they were empty because we warned them well ahead of time. I mean, friends of mine who are old veterans and been involved in the, you know, they say, what is this? We need to understand the threat that ISIS is, first of all. The American people need to understand. The leader of ISIS is a guy named Baghdadi. This guy Baghdadi spent 4 years in our prison camp in Iraq called Camp Bucca, okay? There was 25,000 prisoners there. When he was released, he said to his American captors on the way out, he said, I'll see you in New York. Now that's what Baghdadi said, not what John McCain or Tom Tillis said, okay? They are dedicated to striking the United States of America. And by the way, in case you noticed, you know, we talk about the war on women and how terrible Republicans are and all that kind of stuff. Did you see what ISIS announced? That the enslavement of women is called for in Sharia law? Enslavement of women? So what do we need to do? We need to direct arms to the Peshmerga, the Kurdish military. They have the will to fight, but not the weapons. We won't send them the weapons direct. The Iraqi military is going to take a long time to rebuild. They have the weapons, but not the will. And by the way, right now, it's unbelievable to me that we won't tell the American people that we are losing. ISIS is still succeeding. They're still succeeding. And until we turn that around, then they will keep succeeding. And to say that we're effective, or anyway, we're not telling the American people the truth about how significant these people are. You got to recognize that Iraq and Syria are the same. It's ISIS. They have established this caliphate, and you can't have one strategy for one country and one strategy for the other because there's no difference between them. We need to arm the Free Syrian Army, and we need to do a much better job, and we need to take out Bashar Assad's we need to take out his air assets or declare a no-fly zone, and any plane that he sends into that no-fly zone, a buffer zone on the Syrian side of the Syrian-Turkish border, we take out his aircraft. Bashar Assad, every time we hit ISIS in Syria, Bashar Assad then intensifies his attacks on the Free Syrian Army. The Free Syrian Army are the people we're supposed to be supporting. We're going to train 5,000 of them in Saudi Arabia, send them back. What, to be barrel bombed by Bashar Assad? It's immoral. It's immoral. And then there's so many other things that we have to do. I won't go into them, but Tom put his finger on it. We've got to have a strategy. They do not have a strategy, and the President of the United States needs to do what Ronald Reagan had to do a couple of times, and that's from the Oval Office, look into the camera and say, my fellow Americans, ISIS is a threat to the United States of America, and we are going to take measures necessary to destroy ISIS. So we need leadership, and we need the President to do, frankly, what George W. Bush did in 2006. Some of us may remember. We were losing in Iraq. George W. Bush fired his Secretary of Defense, Donald Rumsfeld, brought in David Petraeus in the surge, sent over a whole bunch of additional troops, and we stabilized it. And we had it stabilized, and all we needed to do was leave a residual force behind, and we didn't. And don't take my word for it, ask Leon Panetta, who was just said in his book. They fought, and we could have left that residual force. Hannah, we owe the men and women who are serving better leadership than we are providing them with. That's the hard but awful truth.
I want to thank everyone for being here today. I want to also, he didn't mention this, but I'm going to mention this, but sitting beside me is a Medal of Honor winner, a proud North Carolinian and a proud Wayne County. there's very few times in my life where I get to sit beside someone like this, and luckily he lives in the district. But I want to thank everyone for being here today. I want to thank the members of the panel. Also, I want to thank our county commissioners and representatives from our city council, the Wayne County Sheriff's Department. Sheriff Pierce was here. The members of the Goldsboro Police Department for being here to help us with parking and securing the area. The members of the panel, thank you for giving up your time today. Members of the press, thank you for being here. And Speaker Tillis and Senator McCain, thank you for what you're doing. And I'll let you close this out.
Well, I wanted to make sure that I think probably the most important person, not probably the most important person to me in the world, and that's my wife, Susan, over here. I want to thank Senator McCain for being here. It is a real honor to have him in the state. I want to thank you all for your service. And God bless.